Hi everybody. Okay, so had a conversation this morning with one of my clients that kind of struck a chord with me. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but it just kind of instigated me to put it in a little sooner than normal. I get a lot of people basically that are trying to eat healthy that get really bored of their food really fast. So there's some tips and tricks that I've come across that I think would be helpful. Some of them my mom actually developed, I think, a way of keeping us interested in eating when we were children, because I was raised vegetarian, and so she tried to make things as flavorful as possible. I'm not a vegetarian any longer, however, everything that we're doing today, you can basically use a protein source, or basically you can easily use portobello mushrooms, you can do zucchini, you can do tofu, or anything like that. So adjust it to your dietary needs. Everything that I'm going to be doing, there's no gluten in it or anything along those lines, so if that's something you're trying to avoid, this is actually a friendly segment for you too. So we're going to go ahead and start, because this is about sauces and dressings, because I think that, and marinades, because if we really want to kick up the flavor of our basic food, basic chicken, basic broccoli, anything along those lines, this is a really easy way to do it. So I'm actually going to start out with barbecue sauce that I do. And my barbecue sauce I make from scratch, because anything bottled basically has way too much sugar in it. And I don't like to get my sugar that way. If I'm going to eat sugar, I'm going to make it worth my while. So barbecue sauce doesn't cut it for me. So what I'm going to go ahead and do in my blender is I've already put in there 3 cloves of garlic, half of a shallot, and a small white onion. Everything's been peeled and everything like that. I have 3 good-sized tomatoes. They're the cluster kind like this. And I put about 3 in there. And then I do 1 teaspoon of chili powder, and then I do 2 teaspoons of paprika. Paprika is probably my favorite way to add some flavor without adding a lot to it. So I add a little bit more of that. That's just my own personal preference. If you don't really like that smoky flavor, then just don't add that much. Add what you want. So now I'm going to add my secret ingredient, because everything I have has a little bit of a quirkiness to it, and this has a little bit of a quirkiness to it. So this is how I make it sweet. I use fruit. So I have peaches and I have 2 apricots. You can actually use anything with a pit. So plums, mangoes, nectarines, anything like that you have. I use fresh. I prefer it over canned, because at least that way you're getting the full nutrients and with the skin and everything like that on, and it blends down nicely in and makes a nice sauce. So I'm just going to go ahead and basically just deep hit everything. It's not anything fun that you're going to watch me do. I had a knife. So I'm just going to go ahead, as you can see, and take all the flesh off of it. So skin, everything, I'm just going to go ahead and pull off everything that I can, so that it basically sweetens it a little bit. So you've got that sweet smokiness that everybody's used to with a barbecue sauce. Squeezing out all the juice that you can, all the flesh that you can from around the pit. Okay, apricots are a little bit easier, considering those are meant cut in half. So just go ahead and take the pit out, saving as much juice as possible. So I always just tend to do it over the blender. And so I did 1 peach and I did 2 apricots. If you like it a little bit sweeter, just add what you want. It's all personal. And wash my hands. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead and blend it. So as you can tell, nothing is cooked yet, and I'll tell you why. And how I do it. So right here, low. About halfway through blending it, I'm going to go ahead and stop it. I'm going to add some olive oil, and then I add a little bit of balsamic vinegar, again, to basically add some acid, but also add some sweetness. It works out to be about a 1/4 cup of the oil, and literally you just need a dab of vinegar. So I would probably say maybe 2 tablespoons that you're putting in. And you can use red wine vinegar too. That offers a nice little complementary flavor. it out of my blender. I'm going to dump it in a giant soup pot. And now I'm going to simmer it so it brings all the flavors together. So I'm just going to put it on low. So I turned it on low and I'm just going to leave it there. Now, one of the things that I do is that also the reason why I don't simmer it until after everything is blended, because some people will do it all in a pot and then basically blend it, is because I want it hot, because I'm going to use a little bit of it tonight for dinner, but then I can actually can and jar it myself. And when it goes into the self-canning jars hot, then it self-seals and I can use it for another meal. So that's my barbecue sauce. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch to salad dressings, which are honestly my favorite, but they're also the marinades that I use. So they kind of serve two purposes. So the first one that I'm going to do is basically like it's a tomato vinaigrette, and it literally is fresh tomatoes. So the thing about dressings is that most of them that I make are oil-based. They're oil and vinegar. That's just the flavor profile I like. If you want to make it creamy, you can add Greek yogurt to either of these, and then you can kind of make it more like a creamy vinaigrette if that's your preference. I'm going to go ahead and start with the one that I use, that I have all my fresh herbs. Some people don't like fresh herbs. I love them, and I keep them as, I don't cook them. I don't do anything as far as using them in a salad dressing. So it makes the flavor really bright. So I'm going to do my tomato vinaigrette first. So I'm going to go ahead. I have my little food processor here, so I'm going to put it up here so you guys can kind of see everything go in. Just washed it, so there's some water in it. Just a minute. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my tomatoes. For this, I'm going to use cherry tomatoes, and the reason why I use cherry tomatoes is because I like to use the variety of color, because as my friend noticed when I made it for her, she didn't understand why it was orange, which is kind of fun. So I go ahead and use just a variety of tomatoes. As far as cherry tomatoes go, this is going to make about 1 jar. And the mason jars that I use basically are the kind of the smaller ones. So the thing about making your own dressing is, the good part is it doesn't last long because there's no preservatives in it. So I don't make a ton at a time, and it's super easy for me to make, so I just make it as I need it. So I'm basically using, I'd say, about 12 cherry tomatoes in here right now. And now I'm going to go ahead, I have my fresh herbs, and I have an herb garden. So I'm going to go ahead and use half of a shallot, and then I'm going to use 1 clove of garlic. I'm going to go ahead and use what I have in here is I have basil, parsley, and chives. I have 2 different kinds of basil. I have basically the purple kind as well as the traditional kind, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it all in here. And the thing about salad dressings is it's a 3-to-1 ratio, which means 3 parts oil, 1 part whatever vinegar you prefer. I'm going to go ahead and use white wine this particular time. So I'm going to go ahead and use the olive oil. And like I said, it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So what I do is I just kind of drizzle it all over the herbs and everything and the fresh tomatoes. And then the white wine vinegar, you can kind of see where the oil comes up. What I'm going to go ahead and do is just kind of eyeball where it's 1 part vinegar to that oil. So you can kind of see it as it goes in and fills everything up. A little bit more. And it'll start to settle, so you can basically add one or the other if you need to. I am going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. So I'm just putting in a little bit of salt. And some pepper. And then I'm just going to kind of take a look at where the oil sits here. I'm going to add a little bit more oil because it looks like basically I put in a little too much vinegar. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and blend it. thingies in there. And like I said, I don't really use the dried herbs, but you certainly can. So if the fresh herb kind of, I don't know. For some people, they think that they're bitter. So if that doesn't work for you, just change it up, figure out what does. The lid got messed up. There we go. I think that was quite messed up. Oh, these little puzzle pieces of mine, all my little gizmos. There we go. So I like mine a little bit more on the chunkier side. If you like it like a fine puree, like an actual vinaigrette, just keep blending it, whip it, it'll emulsify and it'll be just fine. So this is gonna be my salad dressing that I'm gonna be using for this week, but you can also use it, like I mentioned, as a marinade. So I have some asparagus here and I have some chicken. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to use the marinade for both the asparagus and the chicken. And I'm literally just gonna put both of them on a baking sheet. So chicken's on here, the asparagus is on here, and now I'm gonna take the tomato vinaigrette and I'm gonna drizzle some. Right over it. And this is the part where you got to get your hands dirty. So you really want to toss it all with the asparagus. Toss the chicken all in it so that basically it melds with everything and really gets in there. You can do this ahead of time and just leave it in the refrigerator. That's always what I would recommend, so that the flavor profile that does actually all kind of join together. And just really make sure that everything is coated. And I do the chicken in kind of like medallions, so they're like little chunks. I don't like just a big slab of chicken. That's just my own personal taste. I also only eat breasts. I don't eat the dark meat, but if you wanted to, you could obviously do this with thighs or anything like that that you wanted to. And then I am going to roast it, and I'm going to go ahead and do that basically at 350. And I'm going to keep everything there for about 10 minutes at 350, and then I'm going to kick it up to 425 so that everything kind of browns a little bit. And I'm basically going to flip the chicken at that point in time, kind of toss the asparagus, and then I will go ahead and put it back in at the higher temperature, usually for about 7 to 8 minutes, but it's just based on basically me checking it, because it's always different depending upon how thick you cut the chicken or what kind of vegetable you're making. So broccoli works great like this, zucchini, portobello mushrooms, anything along those lines. So whatever veggie you like, go for it. And my dog is in the way of the oven. So I'm gonna stick that in there. That's gonna be my dinner. But now I have a surprise for you. So one of the things that I do, I'm gonna go ahead and put my dressing away. One of the things that I do a lot, and a lot of my clients have tried it recently and they thought that it was a really great idea, and I thought that it's just something everybody does, but apparently it's not, is I do a bean puree. So I'm gonna go ahead and jar this, because I'm gonna need this for the bean puree, and we'll go over how I do that too. So for the bean puree, it is also fresh herbs and everything like that, but you can also make it whatever flavor profile you want to. A lot of the time, basically, I'll just do fresh basil and parsley and kind of do more of like a Mediterranean thing. You can add sun-dried tomatoes if you want to. What I've actually decided to do in this particular one is I've decided to actually add more of like a southwestern flavor. I'm gonna have this one with prawns, but like I said, if you're vegetarian, please do whatever works best for you. This is great with zucchini or portobello mushrooms. Those are always a good meat substitute if you want to. It's also really good with tofu, so knock yourself out. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm going to saute up in my pan, get some garlic and onions going. I'm just gonna rough chop these real quick. Doesn't really matter how you dice them or anything like that, because again, we're just gonna blend this. So you just want it to basically be to where you can saute it in the pan itself. So it doesn't have to be fine chopped or anything like that. It's gonna go into a smooth puree. So garlic and onions go into a pan, turn on the heat. Get those going with a little bit of olive oil. So what I did earlier, let me put this off to the side. It's incredible how my dog literally has to lay right underneath my feet as I'm all over the place in the kitchen. I'm sure you guys have that problem too. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I already roasted these. So I like things spicy, so I have a jalapeno in here, and I also have some red peppers. I roasted them with a little bit of granulated garlic, as well as salt and pepper. So I kept it really simple. I just want the natural flavors to come out. And so I'm actually gonna put that in the blender right now, while the onions and garlic saute a little bit. And the other thing I'm gonna go ahead and put in the pan with the garlic and the onions is I'm gonna go ahead and add some fresh cilantro. And I'm gonna go ahead and put a lid on it so that they can heat up pretty quickly. I'm also gonna check on the barbecue sauce because it's starting to bubble. Just gave it a little taste. I wanted to make sure that the barbecue sauce was good, and it is. Just need some time to have it simmer together, which is normal. All right, so back over here, I went ahead and put the peppers in here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring the camera over real quick, so you guys can see what's going on. Okay. So, nothing special over here. Change of scenery. So we're just gonna go ahead so that you guys can see on. So, just working on it. So, just go ahead and saute this until they're kind of soft. Here, I'll be right back. Sorry about that, my TV came on. I know I should have people to like turn stuff off, but I don't. So, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and saute this all together with the garlic and the shallots and a little bit of fresh cilantro. And then what I am going to do is I am going to get the beans ready, because the bean puree requires beans. So I use the white kidney beans, white navy beans, cannellini beans, I use the Great Northern beans, whatever you guys want. Basically, the only thing that I'm going to mention is if you are trying to basically eat a little bit healthier as far as your diet goes, go low sodium on the beans. Anytime that it's canned, it's just going to have sodium in there. And so anytime you can do low sodium is best. By doing this and using canned beans, I don't add any salt or pepper or anything like that. If you're using dried beans and you're doing it yourself, you might want to add a little bit of salt and pepper. But if you're using canned ones, don't worry about it. All right, so open the beans, drain the beans. Nothing fabulous. I want to make sure that the main thing is that you want to make sure that the onions and the garlic saute, but you don't burn them in any way. So I'm going to go ahead and turn down the heat. My God, I love the smell of garlic and onions. It's just my favorite. Okay, so once you go ahead and open up the cans, you're going to go ahead and drain it, like I had mentioned. Then you're going to take the beans and you're going to throw it in with the garlic, the onions, and the fresh cilantro. And like I said, I'm going southwestern on this one, but it's really good Mediterranean style too, with basil and all that kind of fun stuff. I probably do that a little bit more than I do the southwestern, but I thought that it would be good because I was going to do some prawns, and I was going to kind of make them a little bit more of like a Mexican flavor, so I thought that it would go really well together. So you want to go ahead and just get the beans in here and get them kind of warmed up, as well as basically they can take on the flavor of the onions and the garlic. And I'm going to go ahead and check on where is it? There it is. My asparagus and my chicken while that simmers just a little bit. So see, just all on a sheet. Nothing fancy, but it's all about the actual flavors. So I'm gonna flip the chicken. And toss the asparagus. And now that I have it out, I'm gonna add just a little bit more of the marinade. And I'm going to stir everything around again so the flavors, like we had mentioned, really get in there. And now I am going to kick up the heat. So that everything kind of caramelizes a little bit, especially with the marinade. And I'm going to check on the beans. And like we said, we just want to simmer them a little bit so that basically like the garlic and the onions really get in there. I'm kind of a garlic junkie, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And I'm just going to add a little bit of granulated garlic. And now, you really only need to simmer them for, you know, about 5 minutes or so. It doesn't take a lot. Stirring my barbecue sauce. And so now I'm just going to take the beans after they've simmered for a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in with the peppers. And where'd my lid go? There it is. And again, I'm going to add a little bit more of the paprika just for that smokiness. And this is only about 1/4 of a teaspoon, just a little bit. And then I'm going to puree it. So the consistency should be mostly smooth. So it's kind of like this. It's almost kind of like a warm hummus, to be honest with you. Same kind of concept. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the bean puree and I'm going to go ahead and put it on the bottom of my plate, and then I'm going to put prawns on top of it. So it kind of works as, it adds just a little bit of creaminess to it. Got it? It adds a little bit of creaminess to it, and it just provides kind of a different texture and a healthy side dish that you've made from scratch, not from a box. I was talking to a new client the other day, and one of the things that I highly recommend is trying to eat as close to possible as everything in their natural packaging. So like if it comes in a box that you have to throw away, don't get it. Try to figure out a way to make it yourself. So this is kind of one of those things that it's a side dish that would take the place of like rice, brown rice, Larissa, something along those lines, so that you can kind of have a little bit of a different flavor component. You can still do the veggies on the side, you can do the salad and everything like that. You've got your salad dressing to make it really easy. The other thing that I have really gotten into lately is basically if you take a protein source, whatever it is, and you put it on kind of like the bottom of your bowl, so whether it's a chicken or whether it's tofu, or, you know, like I said before too, if you want to go totally veg and do mushrooms or something like that, you put it on the bottom. And you can put the bean puree underneath it, then you put your protein source on top, and then you take basically a handful of arugula or spinach or greens in some way, put it right on top of everything, and then drizzle your salad dressing over the top, and you literally just eat it all together. So that's also another opportunity for you know, somebody to have an easy meal with things that you've already made. So the only other thing that I was going to mention is with the salad dressings, if you prefer a dried herb over a fresh herb, there's a really easy recipe that I use a lot, where it is, again, it's 3 to 1. 3 parts oil, 1 part vinegar, and I use white wine vinegar for this particular one. I add a teaspoon of ground mustard, a teaspoon of ground oregano, some lemon juice, and then basically about 1/4 of a red onion or a 1/2 of a shallot, that works too, and basically some granulated garlic. And you blend it all together, and that's a good go-to dressing as well. And it also works basically with all of these different flavor profiles, so you can use it on veggies and everything like that. Don't forget, pesto is a wonderful enhancement to veggies. So instead of doing your typical steamed broccoli, basically you can still steam the broccoli, but basically if you put the pesto over the broccoli and kind of toss it all in the pan, if you're going to steam it, if you're going to saute it, if you're going to roast it, whatever you want to do, it's a really nice way to enhance something as basic as broccoli, because we all eat a lot of broccoli, which is good. It's not a bad thing, but you know, we can dress it up, we can mix it up a little bit. So hopefully this gave you guys some ideas on how you can do that. Tonight for dinner, I'm actually going to do the prawns over the bean puree, because that sounds really good to me, with basically just a side salad, and I'm going to use the dressing. So a lot of these things you can make multiple meals out of, and you can continue to use them. So hopefully you find it helpful, but seriously, have fun with your food. Don't do all the basic stupid stuff, because honestly, if we get bored with our food, that's when we quit. That's when you basically go, I don't want to do this anymore, so you know, and everything like that. Make it fun. Lemon juice is a great way to enhance flavor. Love that. So anything along those lines, capers, have some fun, you guys. You know, if you've never had it before, try it. But there's a lot of different ways that you can have fun with food. But the bean puree is actually one of my favorite side dishes. So hopefully, if nothing else, you get the takeaway from that, as well as basically how to flavor your own barbecue sauce, because everyone likes a good barbecue. So anyway, enjoy. Have a great dinner. Bye.